Good morning. Today on Spotlight, a new name for Metro Detroit's premier convention center. Out with Cobo and in with TCF. What's the real significance behind the swap? Larry Alexander, president and CEO of the DMCBB, will tell us.
What's in a name? Quite frankly, everything. Names conjures up images of character and behavior and helps to identify who you are.
We, the team at TCF, deem it an immense honor to have the privilege to rededicate and rename this iconic and world-class facility.
The pain caused in that time still reverberates in this city today. And so I thought it was essential that there be a name change.
It's important for the city of Detroit, state of Michigan, and everyone that lives here to come together.
And later in our program, meet the new executive director of Dearborn's Arab American National Museum. It's Sunday, September the 1st, Labor Day weekend. I'm Chuck Stokes, and this is Spotlight. Almost 60 years, people have been used to saying Cobo Hall or Cobo Center.
Yes.
And now it's TCF.
Yes.
Why is that so significant for this city?
Well, for a number of reasons. First of all, TCF is a huge investor in our city. And we sincerely are grateful that they came to the table and were bidding on the sponsorship opportunity to put their name on Cobo Center.
$33 million, $1.5 million a year for 22 years?
That's correct. And I think TCF recognized the value of the center, what it means as an economic driver, the millions of people that it brings in, the national and international attention it gets when we go out there and promote it as a convention center. So they wanted to be a part of that, and it's a great way to take their brand and expose it to a huge audience across the globe.
I thought it was interesting when Gary Torgo, who's chairman of the board and their executive, chief executive at TCF, cited the history of the building and all of the U.S. presidents who have made remarks there. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. in his famous I Have a Dream speech. And he cited several other key factors that over the past almost 60 years took place in that building as that building went from being sort of small to being huge.
You go back in time and you look at the historical events that have taken place in TCF Center. You look at the presidents that have been there. You look at the inaugurations that have taken place there. It is a facility that has been in the center of history and will continue to be in the center of history. So having the TCF brand to combine with the ability that we have to bring in major events and major figureheads and national and international figures into that facility is a great marriage. And we're just thrilled that we've got TCF that has come to the table and wants to be a part of that marriage.
What's the difference between what TCF just did with the old Cobo and what we see on many of the ballparks around the country when a corporate name goes up there?
Well, the one thing I first want to give credit to is this is the largest sponsorship naming rights agreement in the country for a convention center.
The largest ever?
Ever, okay? We all know that when it's an arena or a sports facility, those garner enormous dollars because it's sports. And everybody, believes that sports as an industry segment has just tremendous value. So the significance of TCF coming to the table and being a part of this engagement is critical. And remember, this started 10 years ago when the legislature created the legislation that allowed the authority to go into existence. They wrote in their wisdom at that time the ability for us to go out for naming rights. So we had to get our own house in order first, so Chuck.
Right. And that was a key step that people
Yes.
may have forgotten that you had to work through 10 years ago, and that was controversial.
Absolutely.
Because you realized at that point you were selling that we have to become our own authority.
Correct.
And we have to be responsible for the dollars that come in and the dollars that come out, and we can't be tied to any one particular municipality.
You nailed it. So TCF saw the value in wanting to be a part of that scenario as we move forward.
All right, we need to take a little break. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about how this helps us as a city in terms of branding and conventions and meetings coming to the city, which I know is of primary importance to you.
Absolutely.
We'll be right back with Larry Alexander. You touched on it earlier. Is perhaps the most important part of this, or at least what sold you and the authority more than anything, is the fact that Chemical Bank, TCF, which merged on August 1st, that this isn't the only thing they wanted to do downtown to hang their sign up, that they're putting up their new headquarters,
Yes.
just 3 blocks away from here. They're investing in the Fitzgerald community over near the University of Detroit.
Correct.
Mercy, that they have their footprints on a lot of things, and they're very much embracing the city and the city's growth.
Recognize where TCF started. Talmer Bank, small bank located in our suburbs here in the state of Michigan. Through the mergers that they have done and the acquisitions they've made, they are now the 27th largest bank in the country, headquartered here in Detroit. That's a gigantic statement to be able to, for them to make, and for us to say, we've got the 17th largest convention center in the country that's partnered with the 27th largest bank in the country, and they're both here in our backyard.
How does this help the overall big picture of what you're trying to do?
Well, you're correct that when we go out across the globe to bring in meetings and conventions, they want to be attached to quality. And as I said, we had to get our house in order first, and we had a number of changes that had to be made with the food service operation, the quality of service, the leadership team, and we have done that, and it's an ongoing process. But having the TCF brand, which is a national brand that people know, that's attached to our convention center here in Detroit, so that people across the globe will go out and say, we're meeting in Detroit at the TCF Center. It just continues to escalate the importance of this marriage. It continues to escalate the brand of TCS, and it continues to escalate the importance of people coming to our city, spending their money here and not taking it somewhere else.
Is there anything at all about this that worries you down the line when you just say, okay, it all looks real great now, but if this and this happened, then we'd have some problems? Or is that not the case at all?
The only thing that worries me, Chuck, is that we get to the end of the 22 years and we don't renew.
Are you seeing the level of corporate friendly competition now that perhaps you thought you wouldn't see, but you're glad to see it, and is it where it should be?
There's no question that the comeback that we have experienced in downtown and the changes that we have seen in our downtown core have truly escalated and elevated this city as a powerhouse and as a competitor when it comes to meetings and conventions and sporting events. I mean, we know when we go out now, we don't have to hang our head about Detroit. Yes, there's always going to be some things that people might say, well, you may not have enough of this or enough of that, but that's any city. I mean, there's no city that's perfect. However, we're on a much different playing field now. We're not starting at a negative below zero. We're above zero and being able to compete with most of these other cities that we go against head to head. Now, yes, people can say we need more hotel rooms. No question about that. We'd love to have more, but when you look at our air travel, look at our convention center, look at the quality of the hotels that we do have that are coming on board, the restaurant scenes that we have now, and the quality of the food and the chefs that we've got, the entertainment options we have, the sporting venues. Can I go on and on? How much time have you got? We've got
I think you made the point.
we've got much more to compete with, and it's a great story to be able to go out there and tell domestically and internationally.
You guys making another pitch for another Super Bowl here anytime soon?
Not a Super Bowl, but we really are thinking about an NFL draft.
NFL draft.
Yes.
All right, chances look good. We just saw the one that they had in Nashville, and I was just recently in Nashville, and they're still talking about what it did for that city.
We got a little work to do, but yeah, we think we've got some components that we can appeal to the NFL with.
All right, very good. Larry Alexander, good talking to you. Thanks so much for coming in.
Pleasure.
And have a great Labor Day.
Thank you. Same to you and your audience.
All right. Coming up, Deanna Abu Ali, leader of the Arab American National Museum. Dr. Abu Ali, thank you so much for joining us today on the show. Fill in the blank for me. The Arab American National Museum is
the first and only museum that's dedicated to telling the story of Arab Americans. We document, preserve, and promote Arab American history, their culture, and their contributions. It's one of the culture-specific museums in the United States. We tell the story not just of Arab Americans, but the story of immigration. The Arab American community is one that has been here for about 150 years, and we are trying through this museum to share that rich culture that they brought with them and that they've created here in the United States.
In your mind, is this the perfect city for that museum, which has been here for a little while now?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. We have the highest, here in Metro Detroit or Southeast Michigan, has the highest concentration of Arab Americans in the nation. There are other enclaves, and there are more Arab Americans in, say, California, but the sort of concentration of them here makes Metro Detroit, and specifically Dearborn, I think the natural place to have a museum for Arab Americans and for the national community.
Give us some idea of your background. You came most recently from Jordan, I believe?
Yep, the past 5 years I've been living in Jordan. I was working in the cultural heritage sectors there, working in different organizations promoting Middle Eastern culture. Before that I was in Palestine, in the West Bank, and I was working at a new museum called the Palestinian Museum, and I was head of research and collections there. But prior to that, I was in the United States. I was a professor at Dartmouth College for many years.
Okay,
So
way up east in New Hampshire?
Yes.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, so I think, you know, at heart I'm an educator, and my life's work has really been learning about and teaching others about Middle Eastern culture, Middle Eastern history, and I think that this job as director is just a continuation of that. It's not so much Middle Eastern culture, but I think Middle Eastern culture in the United States.
Well, we don't have lobster rolls like you get in New Hampshire, but we
No.
got better hummus. Okay?
Yeah, you have great hummus
That I can
here.
guarantee you.
Oh, the food is, I mean, whether it's Middle Eastern or Mexican, or it's just, the food is phenomenal here in Detroit, in Dearborn.
Doctor, what do you hope to accomplish during your tenure at the museum? Do you have sort of a wish list or some set goals yet, or is it too soon for all that?
I mean, we're beginning to shape our vision. I work very closely with my staff to sort of revise what we have done already and to sort of talk about where we want to go. And I'm very intent on making it a joint venture. It's not just me, pushing the museum along. But together we're reassessing what we've done, and I think one of the things that we're really hoping to do in the coming few years is to really make sure that we're a national museum. I think we serve our immediate community very well. We are a community organization. But I think we need to do a little more work to reach out to the national Arab American community. I think we've...
You mean in terms of attracting people from all parts of the country to come here?
Yep, that's part of it.
Not just the exhibits, but also the attractions?
Yeah, to bring them here to really make Dearborn, East Dearborn, an anchor, a hub for Arab American culture. I think the museum has, I've inherited it from two great directors who served previous to me, and they've really helped establish the Arab American Museum as a magnet for arts and culture and creative people in the United States, Arab Americans. And I think we need to do more to reach out to those that maybe haven't gotten to us yet. Like I said, there are pockets of Arab American communities all over the nation. We want to hear their stories. We want to hear what their experiences were. We want to get a sense of what their life and their culture is and make it a richer place that represents, as much as we can, all Arab Americans.
From your vantage point, why are museums in general so important to our culture?
Museums are one of the most trusted institutions around. What museums do is not just preserve history, but they tell a story. And what museums do ultimately, I think, and when we go to museums and we see these stories of human experience, it reinforces that we're basically all the same. We go through the same experiences, we have the same stories at some level. There's something essential that unites us all. And somehow they're kind of a neutral space where, for instance, the Arab American National Museum is a place where Arab Americans can feel safe to express their opinions about certain things, to share their experiences, to debate topical issues. It's a meeting ground, yeah, and I think museums are headed in that direction, and somehow they serve that purpose really well.
All right, we're going to slip a little break in here. When we come back, I want to talk about some of the specific exhibits that you have there and what you're doing at the museum that the community can partake in. All right, we'll be right back. Don't go away. I know you constantly have various exhibits going on, but you also have culinary stuff, if I can get it off my tongue.
Yeah.
Walking tours. All
Yeah. So we have, we have exhibits, temporary exhibits every so often. We have a permanent exhibit that is tells us the history, the story of Arab Americans coming to America, how they came, why they came, and the different periods in which they came in. And we have another part that's about living in America, about their culture, what they did when they were here, how they lived, their home life, their private life as well. And then we have a section on making an impact, how Arab Americans impacted the United States, whether as politicians.
So people can get a full appreciation
Absolutely.
about how much what a big role they have played in our society in general.
Absolutely. But we try to sort of, introduce or share Arab American culture in different ways, not just through our exhibits. And one of them is what you mentioned, the walking tour, which is, we call it Yalla Eat. Yalla means let's go or come on. Mm-hmm. And so we take participants on a walking tour either of Warren Street or Michigan Avenue. And we stop at certain vendors and they taste the different cuisines, they get to talk to the vendors, and it's a
look at all the different businesses up and down those streets.
And how food is a great way to learn about another culture, because not just the ingredients in the dish and the taste, but also how is it presented, what kind of rituals are there around food, what's the symbolism of certain dishes. So it's a great way to learn about different cultures, and I think it's a very popular and successful tour, and we're really happy that we have it, and we're going to do it again.
What's the biggest challenge for a museum director, whether it's this particular museum or any museum? Is it funding and
It's always funding.
Always funding.
Always funding, but I think it's finding out how to remain relevant and how to keep up with the changing culture. I think we are very attuned to what older generations might want in a museum, but we're also very attuned to what the younger generation wants and needs. And we we're very attuned to what their sort of cultural references are and what's important to them. Social justice is a major topic that is very important to this younger generation. And we try to address that issue in not only our programming, but also in the way we run the museum and the way we've got a social equity and justice committee to ensure that there is equity in the museum, that there's inclusivity at the museum, not just for staff, but for visitors as well. So it's, trying to be relevant and, keeping your hand on the pulse. Museums like ours, which tell the story of a community that has immigrated to the United States, we tell our story in our own words. We give voices to those Arab Americans that came, that lived, that succeeded, or even not succeeded. There are multiple stories and voices, and we amplify those voices. I think in this current debate, there's usually, one story or the other, and I think we need to listen carefully to the different voices that are there. We don't tackle immigration head on, but we try to do it through arts and culture. So currently we have an exhibit at Ellis Island, at the Ellis Island Museum, in New York City, called What We Carried, and it's photographs of objects that Syrian and Iraqi refugees brought with them to the United States. And then after the photographer gives them the photograph back, after they've taken the picture of the object, and they write a commentary on it in English or Arabic. And so when you see that, it's a very poignant reminder of, that immigration is in many ways people come here for refuge, and people come here for work, and they're an integral part of our society. But we don't sort of address it head on. We do it through these ways that maybe tell the story, a human story behind this larger debate on immigration.
And perhaps as the various cultures of America get to know each other better, then it cuts down on the fear that some cultures currently have of other cultures in America.
Right. We through our work, we address a lot of the misconceptions that people have of immigrant communities. We counter xenophobia by showing that, yes, Arab Americans have a different culture, but they're also American. And there's not just one type of Arab American, there are many. And they're just as nuanced and multidimensional as any other American. Yeah. So I think what we try to do is, like I said, put a human face on this on this community.
And why diversity can be America's strength and not its
absolutely,
weakness. Yeah.
Absolutely. It can only be in its interests.
All right. Doctor, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you so much.
Best of luck.
Thanks.
To you over at the museum, and anything we can do to help out in your new role here.
Thank you.
Don't hesitate to let us know.
Thanks, I will.
All right. Special thanks to all my guests today. Have a great Labor Day. I'm Chuck Stokes. We'll be back next week with more newsmakers in the Spotlight.